Thank you for joining us. Second hour of the Jack Blood Show coming your way. We're live. Happy Monday. Welcome, my fellow thought criminals, enemies of the state, Gitmo Nation, and Brad the Impaler, wherever you are. August 27th, 2012. He's James Corbett. He does the great Corbett Report, CorbettReport.com. Also hosts a show on the RBN network and does his own podcast. And I love coming on his show. I love it when he comes on our show. We've agreed to do a once-a-month deal and share our knowledge and share our audiences. And we got to figure out how to simulcast this stuff. James Corbett, thank you for being with us today.
No, Jack, you got it all wrong. Al-Qaeda isn't the enemy anymore. They're our friend. Didn't you get the memo?
I know. In Syria, they're very helpful.
Exactly right. So says Ed Hussein, Senior Fellow for Middle Eastern Studies at the CFR. And if the CFR is saying it, it must be true.
That's why I have you on, brother. Well, and then they helped us in Libya. And they helped us in Afghanistan back in the 80s, and they helped us in Kosovo, and they are our friends. Well, that's why we invented them and gave Osama bin Laden the code name Tim Osman, right?
Well, friends in need are friends indeed, and it looks like the terrorists in Syria need our backing now, so I guess we'll just have to go in and help them. Of course, this is after the al-Qaeda terrorists in Libya that we supported, apparently, allegedly, as you'd like to say, stole the chemical weapons that Gaddafi had, and apparently have snuck them off to Turkey, where they're amassing them, where the Free Syrian Army is training in their Turkish headquarters base of operations, with the intent, supposedly, according to these reports, of staging a chemical weapons false flag attack and blaming it on the Assad government. And as we know, Obama just drew that new red line. If Assad so much as moves any of his chemical weapons, that might be a case for intervention. So all the steps are there for the next false flag.
Trust them on that. If they move those chemical weapons, which may not even exist, trust them on that. They'll tell you if they're moved, and that is, again, that's the call to war. He's inviting war, and they've already named this a civil war in Syria, which I'm sure you've noticed, James, which means that any of these people can be prosecuted for war crimes and hung like Saddam Hussein was, allegedly.
Hey, maybe we should ask Rumsfeld where the chemical weapons are in Syria, because he was so good at locating them in Iraq.
Yeah. Well, and that's funny because I asked Oliver North that, and he was still spewing that on my show in like 2004, I think it might have been. And I said, "Look, man, okay." And what did he say? They moved him to Syria. That's what he said. Okay, they've been setting this up for a long time. And I said, "Well, you've got all these satellites that can read a license plate, and then how did they manage to sneak those out right under your nose? And where are they?" And yeah, he told me, "Well, the satellites don't work that way, Jack, and you got to talk to Oliver North, and he gives you that little puppy dog voice, and he's so innocent all the time. It's just amazing. You could see how effective this guy can be in a trial or something, right?" And, oh no, that's not how satellites work. We don't have any way to just keep them hovering over one area, which is complete bullshit.
Well, good old Ollie North. I mean, how could you fail to trust him after Iran-Contra and all of that? And what did he have running out of his office, his special planning operations office, the Promise software, or at least the early iterations of it that were stolen from Inslaw in the whole Octopus affair. So just the layers of deception go so deep with characters like that, you don't even know where to begin.
Well, if we have a few more shootings, we'll be talking about that. So what is your take on, I just did a half-an-hour interview with somebody who actually had the story before anyone else about who wrote this bin Laden book. I'm very suspicious of the timing. None of it adds up. It stinks to high heaven. And, we don't have any direct information here, but apparently this thing is staged to be kind of critical of Obama, that he's taking too much credit for what happened. But they're reinforcing this bin Laden kill story and giving Obama commander-in-chief position regardless. I mean, it's just the timing of it is really a September surprise.
Yeah, I guess, it looks like it's being positioned to be that at any rate, and I must confess ignorance about this latest development. I don't really know about this new book, but absolutely I think that these types of events generally are used to just prop up the narrative, and it becomes a left-right game of finger-pointing and whatever, but all, of course, that does is, as you say, prop up the narrative that we're meant to be fed and swallowed, that yes, it was bin Laden, of course, and we dumped him at sea, and there are no pictures we're ever going to release to you, and just take our word for it. And everyone will, because they'll go back into that left-right squabble game.
Was it George Bush who set this all up and Obama just came in and took credit for it? Was it our wonderful military that should get more money than God ever before next year and the year after? Or was it, just Was it just
Clinton is to blame for 9/11 because he didn't strike Osama hard enough?
Yeah. But I love how they protest so much and how they completely sound like they're disagreeing, but when you actually listen to them, they're saying the exact same thing. That's what these debates are going to sound like, the Obama-Romney, the Obamney debates. I want to kill Israel. I want to help Israel. I want to kill Syrians. No, I want to kill them first and faster. And what did you do in Libya? You took too long to go over there and shove a stick up the ass of the dictator we propped up in Libya. We would have done it sooner. I mean, this is what we hear. They're saying the same thing. It's just they disagree on some of the minutia.
Well, unfortunately, I think the public has been fed this type of quote-unquote debate for so long that they actually think that this is what a political debate is supposed to be. I mean, I would be interested to see people go back and watch some of the debates, even from 50 years ago, when they were still very much staged in left-right partisan politics, but nowhere near the level of ridiculousness.
Hey, my name's Jackie Bro.
And I'm Dunlap.
Yeah, we're from Red State Update.
Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
This here question's for all you candidates.
Mainstream media seems awful interested in old Al Gore these days.
Is he losing weight? What's it say in his book? Is he still worried about all the eyes?
Possibly make, and that's what Romney's been doing the whole time. He hasn't been trying to win. There's just no way he's this stupid. So I think he's got a payoff coming, and he's just playing the role of humble servant. That's why they would do anything to protect that nomination and make sure that Romney got it, even though he's got no support.
Well, it looks like we know which management team of the New World Order is going to take over the next 4 years, but I'm not sure how useful that information is in the big scheme of things.
Is it Warren Buffett or George Soros?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point, isn't it?
How does that look? You're in Japan. What do they say about our electoral process and these coronation ceremonies? And it's big news all over the world, isn't it? I mean, there's every news agency in the world converged upon this place. I've seen it firsthand. What is it like over there?
I would say the general public follow it and they know who the president is generally, but it's even more surface level than the American public. Obama obviously was a hit over here because yes, we can became a catchphrase even amongst Japanese people. I mean, it was bizarre when I was teaching in the Japanese school system to see little elementary school students going around saying, yes, we can, yes, we can. And then they'd ask me, what does that mean? So it was just bizarre that caught on, internationally, even in foreign languages where people didn't know what was being said. But yeah, it's actually kind of the perfect political process for exporting around the world because it is absolutely just surface and the way people look and the way they dress and all of this is just the message that is meant to be conveyed by these political puppets, and it works very well. So I mean, it's like, I don't know, Charlie Chaplin back 100 years ago, one of the best known people in the world simply because every single culture could relate to it. Well, I guess every single culture can relate to these teleprompter reading puppets who do nothing but look good in a suit and deliver a nice speech.
Well, sure, and as I mentioned earlier, I mean, if you can't control the people with fear, then control them with hope and change.
Or ideally a combination of the two. Yeah. I think Brave New World and 1984 had an illegitimate love child, and we're experiencing that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention anything that Philip Dick ever wrote.
Yeah, good point. He often gets left out of that matrix, but it's definitely part of it.
Well, sure, because you can punish somebody like Brandon Robb for writing on Facebook. And by the way, I'm sure you're familiar with that story, right? The Marine who was incarcerated, not charged with a crime, put in a detention, a mental facility, until, a lot of people found out about it and he was released because he posted some errant comments, some militant maybe comments on Facebook. This, of course, reminding us all that Facebook is watching us all the time, and the repercussions from that I'm already feeling. James, I don't know about you, but people are writing me and going, please remove any trace of me on your Facebook page. I'm too scared now to be associated with you, and I might go to jail and be punished for this. So it's already having a ripple effect, a fear loop ripple effect.
Well, if it gets people off Facebook, I guess that is a good thing. But no, it is a bad thing if people are just giving into the fear of it. And that story that's just a bizarre story. I still don't quite know what to make of it because even within the context of the police state we're living in, it's pretty bizarre that we've come to that level of Orwellian tyranny. And I don't know what to make of it. And if it is just an attempt to just shove the police state in people's face and make them eat it, I guess unfortunately, as you say, it is working on some people. And I've seen that for a number of years. I mean, I have been covering a lot of the panopticon surveillance grid type developments that have been going on for years now. And as an essential part of that message now, I try to make it part of the message whenever I'm covering that type of stuff, to stress to people that this is not about backing down and being quiet and tuck your tail between your legs and don't say anything. It's the exact opposite. We are not the criminals. We are not the ones who have anything to worry about when we're speaking the truth to power. It's the people in power that are worried about us, and that's exactly why it is so important to exercise these First Amendment rights in the U.S. or just natural human rights anywhere in the world, to say what we know to be true and to stick with that. And so it has to be a message of not fear but empowerment, because we still do have all the power, and that's the thing they are desperate to make people forget.
Well, and this is why, and going back to the bastard love child of 1984 and Brave New World Order, even better, which is, I think we might have talked about this last time because I think he brought it up, and reading Brave New World Revisited really makes all these points and even gets into why eugenics and why population control and, tyranny and the rest of it, and it compares the two books, I think, very aptly. But we get into that, and we look at a guy like Brandon Robb, and he's certainly being punished in the vein of 1984. I don't know. I mean, where did he go in that mental institution? Did he go to room 101? We don't know, per se, and we're rats in a cage attached to his face. I mean, that we don't know. But that is going to happen to one person, to maybe two people, but not to all of us. So the other part of this genetic experiment in literature back in the day, Brave New World, or 1984, is that in Brave New World, you had to love your slavery. You had to even beg for it. You had to want it. You had to want Big Brother and all of this, and that's where most of the attention is, isn't it?
Absolutely, and more people are really learning to love their enslavement and are so invested with their personal identity in the system that to actually question it would be to endanger themselves in some way, that they feel that they're so much a part of the system and the system is a part of them that if they turn on it now, then they'll be turning their back on themselves. I mean, it's difficult to even put this into words, but it is disturbing to me. It's something that I don't think I ever would have suspected before I started getting into all this information and started my website, that people actually truly could be made to love their servitude. I mean, I used to look at books like Brave New World or 1984, or all the other dystopian fiction, and I used to think, oh, those are just nice, stories, but they're just stories. And the more I look at it, the more it is absolutely true. I mean, doublethink is something that people truly do on a day-to-day basis, and the memory hole is something that truly exists, and Room 101 is something that exists at the very least in the figurative sense, in the sense that they're constantly shoving our enslavement in our face and making us, see 5 lights when there are only 4, or whatever the case may be. I mean, they're making us into these pliable robots and automatons who will go around defending the very state that's enslaving us. And I never, in my wildest dreams, could have imagined that could be translated from fiction to reality. But they're doing it, and it's a nightmare to behold.
Yeah, well, and it's part Animal Farm as well. Well, look, I mean, what do we do? To get into this a little more, I guess, esoterically, we use self-censorship on ourselves in the form of political correctness in following the so-called laws that are, most of them, again, selectively enforced. We also collectively enforce this self-censorship, this political correctness on our neighbors, on our friends, on our family, on on our coworkers, anybody we come in contact with. The second you say something that could be perceived as not politically correct, you're immediately ostracized, you're immediately condemned and judged. And we do this. It's not the state that does it. We do it. We do it to each other. What happens, James Corbett, if people are told they have to give up their cell phones, their electronic monitoring devices, their electronic leashes? They wouldn't know what to do. Their iPhones. They can't leave the house. They'll go halfway to work, realize they forgot their iPhone, and freak out and turn around and go get it and text all the way back to work. What would they do? This is your slavery, and you love it.
people would happily march into the little most squalid, disgusting, turgid, horrible prison cell with a cell phone than to be forced to go without it. And that's the age that we're living in. And the question is, what do we do about this? And I mean, it's not going to be an easy answer to that, because unfortunately we've been steeped into this culture for so long now, and bit by bit, and people have been led along of their own accord. It hasn't been the people with the gun pointing it at you, making you buy the latest iPhone or whatever the case may be. It's that this technology is so sexy, it's so cool, everyone wants it. If you don't want it, you're just weird. And you're exactly right that I think that the important part of all of the enforcement of this is not the people with the guns and the jackboots. I think that's those types of stories make it big because that they like to trumpet those types of stories to keep people in line. But I think the real insidious part of all of this is, as you say, it's the snitch state mentality, and the fact that they're trying to get everyone to spy on each other and to tattle if someone's out of line. And it's the more I get detached from my old view of statism and the need to have the government, the more I see it for what it is, which is just basically the family unit writ large, and in that family unit you have mother and father government. I mean, it's Democrat, Republican, representing the two sides of the statist power, I suppose, and then everyone else is just brothers and sisters, the children of the family who have to be looked after by the state or reprimanded or scolded by the state, as the case may be, and we'll all tell on each other, oh look, hey mommy government, daddy government, come over here, you have to punish this one because he's out of line. And it's exactly that type of family dynamic that is playing itself out in the greater community, in the society at large. And it's so sad to me that so few people actually want to become adults and actually take responsibility for themselves. So that's really the message that I'm involved with preaching, and I guess I just have to have faith that enough people will eventually start to see that they are being treated as children and will actually not want to be treated as children, will try to take some of that responsibility back into their own hands, with all of the crushing, bearing burden of responsibility that brings, as well as all of the benefits of liberty.
That was brilliant. I'm not even going to touch that, man. Awesome. James Corbett, the Corbett Report. What have you been talking about this week or recently? What are you publishing up on your podcast, and what are you getting ready to report? Anything you want to drop on us? Because this is a kind of a quid pro quo deal with us, sharing time on each other's shows. I want to give you time to report whatever you want to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, first, let me say that I believe as of this moment, my servers are down. So if people are trying to access... Oh, wait, they're back up. Well, I've been having some weird problems with my server today, so I don't know what that's about.
Sure, it's all a coincidence.
But at any rate, hopefully people will be able to access my work once I talk about it. I just did a podcast episode on Power Corporation, which is a Canadian business. It started out actually as a type of power company that owned hydroelectric utilities in Canada until they were nationalized, because Canada is just such a socialist utopia back in the 1950s. And basically all of their holdings in power companies were liquidated, so they had all this cash, so they started buying up financial and real estate and other companies. And they became a holding company, just basically purchasing other companies for that purpose. And they were taken over by a family, the Desmarais family, back in the 1960s. And this Desmarais family they've been called the Canadian Rockefellers, or the Canadian Vanderbilts, Canadian Rothschilds. They have been sitting here behind the scenes of the throne of power in Canada, the political stage theater of power in Canada, for the last 50 years or so, and have been quietly puppeteering things, and just one indication of that is the fact that every single prime minister for the last 50 years or so has been in one way or another related to this power corporation. So it's a fascinating thing, and all the more fascinating because almost no one has talked about this, even in the alternative media. Very, very few people know about this family and their connections, and sitting on the Trilateral Board Commission and frequent Bilderberg attendees. I mean, every single globalist credential you could name, they're part of it. So I did a podcast episode on that. I talked to a couple of Canadian researchers, Andrew Gavin Marshall and Lawrence McCurry, about it. So quite a bit of research on that. Also, I've been talking about what's happening in my own neck of the woods here. As as Hillary Clinton talked about at the APEC conference last year, Asia Pacific is becoming the center of gravity for the world. So I've been running with that and doing more research on what's going on here in East Asia, in Southeast Asia, as China really is starting to assert itself more openly. And I think we're starting to see the buildup of the next Cold War, the next boogeyman after, they're done with Syria and Iran and whoever's next on their hit list, assuming they are able to bring that off. I think definitely Asia is going to be becoming more and more important. And I'm sure a lot of Americans may not know some of the details about what's happening here, but trust me, just like you start to find out about the Middle East once it becomes that geopolitical hotspot, people will be finding out more about the Asian region. So I'm trying to head that off at the pass and talk to some people about what's happening in the East China Sea, the South China Sea, drones in this region they're ramping up big time over here. The Australian-U.S. military alliance with the Marine deployment to Darwin, Australia, talks of new military bases in Australia, all sorts of things happening here that are going to be making the news one way or another.
Well, and what you said at the beginning of the Cold War, I think the Cold War has already started. Again, let's just stay with the theme then, 1984. What did they say? Oceania, which is exactly how the UN refers to us in this part of the world, is always at war with Eurasia, which is how they, coincidentally enough, how they refer to, this isn't fiction anymore. That's how they refer to the Asian quotient. We're always at war in 1984, and there's always a boogeyman, and his name is Goldstein. And in this case, it's bin Laden, or they'll find a new one, I'm sure, pretty soon. But what people don't know is that, when we're talking about saving the people of Libya, or saving the people of Syria, or saving the people of Darfur, what we're really talking about is saving the resources for Oceania, because Eurasia is in there, and they're trying to get them. So we already have this global economic war. They use the price of oil to affect China, to affect your people in Eurasia, and certainly the producers. And then Russia gets in on this one way or another, and we use the war machine for this. So I'm already saying we're in a Cold War, and I don't know how soon or if this will ever go hot. There seems like there is a lot at stake here with $1 trillion in debt owned by the Chinese of U.S. debt, but also you're in Japan. They own more. They actually own more than China. You don't ever hear that. And the Federal Reserve, of course, owns more than all of them, of our debt. That's the truth, folks. But there already is, James Corbett, a warfare going on, economic warfare globally, and even a Cold War with Eurasia. Oceania is at war with Eurasia.
Right. You're exactly right on that point. I mean, it is absolutely straight out of the Soviet Union cookie cutter Cold War template that they've perfected in the 20th century. They're just going to, I think, transplant that over to China for the 21st. But just a side issue. But you bring up Emmanuel Goldstein from 1984, and every time I go back and reread that book, I get something new out of it. And the most recent reading that I did, I was fascinated. It never dawned on me before. But do you remember the title of Emmanuel Goldstein's book that they're the members of the Brotherhood get to read?
I don't know.
The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism. It is absolutely so spot on. I mean, Orwell is just he was so perceptive about what the real problem and issues was. But that is the one book, the fictional book that I would most like to read. But the little excerpts that they give in 1984 just perfectly describe the situation and really what's at the base of it, which is this collectivism ideology, whereby we subsume our individuality in the state. But back on the idea of the Cold War, I think it's a particularly apt analogy to what is, as you say, already taking place here with China as the new boogeyman. Because as we know from people like Anthony Sutton and his research with not only the Nazis, but also the Bolsheviks were funded and set up and completely perpetuated and built up to be what they were by the West, by Wall Street, by the big multinational corporations that literally created and funded and designed and planned the first 5-year plan for Lenin back at the beginning of the big Bolshevist experiment over there. So
they created that boogeyman. That's what he's saying. They created that boogeyman for us, and now they created the most favored nation, as Rockefeller said. What was it in the New York Times? That Mao's China is the ideal society. They love it, and this is. I mean, you look at Obama, and he gets accused of being America hater, socialist, whatever, but he's following the same playbook. And what are all his supporters saying? Like Bill Maher and all these guys that have a voice here, they're saying, well, Obama should have dictatorial powers. He shouldn't have to wait on this Congress, this do-nothing Republican Congress, and he should just write executive orders and do whatever the F he wants because he knows better than us, as you mentioned. They're the mama government, and then the papa government is fighting with the mama, so the little kids aren't getting their little crumbs falling off the table, and that's what they want. But what you've said is so important for people to understand is this boogeyman that we're about to fight, that we are fighting, that we are paying to fight, is a boogeyman of our own creation in China. That's just a fact.
Unfortunately so, and it would really help for people, I think, to go back to Sutton's work, especially Wall Street and the Rise of the Bolsheviks, or the Bolshevik Revolution, was it? Absolutely, people should go back and reread that, where he names names, and he has it all documented with the names and the dates and the contracts that were signed by what, companies were doing what work for, the Leninists and the Stalinists, and what technology was transferred and at what time by what corporations, and it's all there, it's all documented, it's all black and white. But, of course, once he started going into that level of research, he was no longer welcome at the Hoover Institute, where he was originally doing his research. But no one could refute it. They just decided to ignore it for the most part, although he was even name-checked by people like Brzezinski and others who basically were quoting off his work. Because once again, there's a different level of research and understanding for the elite political classes than there is for you and I, and we get the crumbs at the bottom of the table, the propaganda that spills off that they just
even better. We fight over the crumbs. They've got us fighting over the crumbs on top of it. You mentioned Canadian oligarchy earlier, Canadian bloodlines, and then we've got a guy named Maurice Strong, who was discovered as an 18-year-old page at the United Nations. He's now a billionaire, and he was groomed by David Rockefeller personally. And by groomed, it's just stuff I don't even want to talk about on the radio on a Monday. It's just too disgusting. But he's now sitting at the right hand of the Chinese government. He's over there as David Rockefeller's eyes and ears and whatever else. And that's my opinion. But he's there, and he's been there for years. And that really tells me something.
It should tell everyone something, and do you want to guess what company he was president of back in 1966?
Tell me, I forget.
Power Corporation, the Desmarais
there it is.
Company. So it's all related. And
Bronfman, Strong's, Desmarais, all just kind of melt in together. And also he had set up I forget the name of it, but he had set up the Internet too with a bunch of other billionaires that were controlling communications. And so that, of course, we're waiting for the Internet Pearl Harbor. As we know, the Internet Patriot Act is already written. We saw the FCC is coming out today. They want to tax the Internet because that way they can control it legally with the IRS, and they're getting ready for all of this as well. Maurice Strong also tied very closely into some pretty weird stuff like this Temple of Set and this kind of Luciferian occult New Age-ism that is supposed to be the secular humanism that is supposed to be the future religion for the world. So, I mean, the guy's just, he's got his fingers in just about every pie, and you look at him and you go, man, that guy doesn't even look competent enough to cut his own meat, let alone, make the rules for the rest of us. And that was a pun, yes.
Well, yeah, you're right about all of that. He even had this plot of land in Colorado that he was using for his New Age retreat or whatever, and it just so happened that after he purchased the land, they discovered it was on one of the largest natural aquifers in the world or something along those lines, so they've started bottling the water, and he's making billions off of that now as well. So it all fits into this just tiny knit group of really bizarre people who are driven by these bizarre beliefs and ideologies, who really do have this tight-knit grip on political power and the financial, oligarchy and everything that they've created. And it's something that I try to stress as much as possible, is that you and I and everyone else at our level who have nothing to do with these people and really don't have any direct way of stopping this agenda that they're bringing out at the political level. It is absolutely fed by you and I and everyone else out there by the purchases that we make on a day-to-day basis, where we choose to shop, what we choose to spend money on, what we choose to spend our time on, and what we choose to do with our lives are still our choices, and they haven't gotten the gun to our head in that manner of speaking, in that level of our day-to-day lives yet. And while we have that choice, I mean, it is truly a choice that we make to feed the beast or not to feed the beast. So there's very little that we may be able to do about the big geopolitical machinations that they're doing on an individual level, but something that we can do on an individual level every single day is choose, where we get our money or what money we use, whether to support an alternative local currency or whether to set up a community garden or whether to start an open source manufacturing project like some of the people are coming up with these days that are just, mind-blowing stuff that is possible because of this technology that we're using right now to communicate, which is the same technology that they're using to set up the spy grid. So it is a very bizarre and kind of self-contradictory process at times, but yeah. I still think that we have to take responsibility for what we're doing to feed the beast and to stop feeding it with our money, our time, and our attention.
Well, and that's it. It's non-compliance, non-participation, and if you want to call it disobeying your masters, go ahead. And then at the bottom of all of this and at the top is decentralize and repeal. That's what you do at your neighborhood level, and you get in with your city councils, you get in with the locals, and we've done it, and we've been successful. We've won some battles. We haven't won the war yet, James. That was a great first segment. I got to take a quick break. James Corbett is with us, thecorbettreport.com. I'm Jack Blood. You're listening to the Jack Blood Show. We'll be back in just a minute. All right, well, I'm sure the thought police will come and get us for that. I'm not afraid. I'm sure most of you know that. Neither, apparently, is James Corbett. The Corbett Report. Just Google it. It's out there. It's linked at deadlinelive.info. This is the Jack Blood Show. We're very happy to have you today. And Muse, I guess. All right. Well, there's a lot going on. Apparently, there is another hurricane bearing down, eerily following the same path as Katrina, right on the anniversary. Yes. What is it now? It's 7 years to the day, almost. Yeah, it was heading right towards the convention, and it was going to ruin the Romney's coronation ceremony and make life bad for the Paul fans out there. And they're going to get some rain, but all of a sudden it took a turn west and started heading right for New Orleans, or Nuevo Orleans, as a lot of people call it there now. You've been following this one, James Corbett. Thanks again for being with us.
I've been following it just from the headlines. I don't really know the details, but as you say, interesting. And as we know, as you've said on my program, and as I know from my research, we've had the technology to steer storm systems and hurricanes and the like for a long time now. So it would be naive to think they're not using that technology.
Well, and it strikes memories of how Bush failed us during Katrina, right at the time they're having the conventions, a big disaster piling right in there again. And it also gives the Democrats, mommy government, a chance to talk about global warming again.
Interestingly enough, I just saw a post on Climate Depot pointing out that it seems every GOP convention has some sort of storm associated with it. Jeb Bush ditched the 2004 convention because of a hurricane that was bearing down on Florida, and 2008 also another hurricane. So yeah, I don't know. It's not a GOP convention without a hurricane, apparently.
Well, we watched Katrina. It seemed to be going out to the Atlantic, and all of a sudden some weird weather anomaly hit it. Scott Stevens, the former NBC weatherman, had pointed this out and showed how it looked like there was some kind of very strange weather anomaly that turned the hurricane and sent it right into to New Orleans. But I had mentioned, okay, well, let's remember Bush and Katrina by all means. Let's remember what FEMA did to stop and to not help the people. Let's remember how they blew those levees. Let's remember how the police shot people on the street, how Blackwater kicked in people's doors, and how they held people at gunpoint inside the Superdome when they went for help. I'm happy. Let's just remember all of that. But while we're at it, since we're talking about the Gulf, let's remember how the Obama administration completely acquiesced to Beyond Petroleum, BP and Halliburton, and covered up that entire mess. We're too scared to even go out there as the government to investigate what had happened with the Gulf oil spew. Complete cover-up. So everybody's guilty. Yay. Don't believe in anything, folks. Just don't. There's no help. No one's going to help you. Don't believe in anything anymore because it's all shitty. And I think that's kind of almost what they want you to believe, isn't it? Isn't it, James? They want you to believe. Just don't even try anymore. And if you do, if you're too stupid to not know that, then vote for us.
Well, it's different levels of propaganda for different layers of society, isn't it? And it's so brilliant when you think about it. I mean, as long as there's enough dirt on both sides, if for the people who want to buy into the system and choose one side or the other, they can always point at the dirt on the other people. But they also have to do that doublethink concept of not seeing the dirt on themselves. So they start to invest themselves in that system, and they can never step outside of it because then they'd have to admit that they were wrong all that time. So they get that system engineered just perfectly so that there's blame to spread around on both sides, and so people will have just a great time fighting with each other in that race, never step outside of it.
Never a lot of blame, though. They keep each other's secrets because they know if they really tell you what the Republicans have done, that being the Democrats, for instance, the Demo-Publicans, they really say what George Bush has really done. That is the smuggling of the cocaine. I mean, we're finding out now that this Sinaloa cartel was completely owned and almost run by our federal government agencies from Bush through Obama. So neither of them really want to spill the beans too much, do they, James? They don't want to tell too much about the other side because the other side can come back and go, well, really? What about these guys?
You call boys in the Bush White House? Come on, that's conspiracy talk, Jack.
Yeah, and then, in the Obama White House, we know Jeb Bush has been going for regular visits. I'm not saying that he was there to do anything inappropriate other than, steal the Republic. Speaking of weather and hurricanes and tsunamis, why don't you give us an update on what is going on with Fukushima, because God knows we're not hearing anything here.
Yeah, good point. In fact, we are just coming into typhoon season here, so it is something to be watching, especially as Reactor 4 remains probably one of the biggest potential problems for the entire world as it still remains in its teetering state. For people who don't know, the Reactor 4 containment building, badly damaged, obviously, in the earthquake and tsunami, is teetering and shows signs that it could collapse in the event of an earthquake, or who knows, maybe a strong typhoon hitting it. Typhoon. What am I talking about? And unfortunately, it still has something in the order of 1,300 fuel rods that contain the spent fuel pool, that are in the spent fuel pool, that contain just an incredible amount of radioactive waste that if that was released into the atmosphere, all bets are off the table in all possible ways. So TEPCO the Tokyo Electric Power Co. has started test runs to show, proof of concept, I guess, of how they would get these rods out. And they've taken out 2 rods in a test run that was plastered all over the media here when it happened, neglecting the fact that there's still 1,300 plus that are still actually in Reactor 4 building right now, and will not be, the actual work to get them out is not scheduled to begin until December 2013. So another at least year and a half of holding the world as a nuclear hostage, pretty much, just waiting for this to get going. Yeah. And who knows what the problem is, what the holdup is in all of this. I mean, they can get 2 out. Why can't they get the rest out? But that's how this type of situation works and how it slowly unfolds.
We've also heard of the butterfly mutations up there. If there's butterfly mutations, you can bet there are child mutations, people mutations, other mutations, radiated food chain, and all the rest of it. I'm not one of these people that's saying, look, we're all going to die because of Fukushima. I was right about that. I was right about BP. They said the Corexit was going to kill everybody in Texas. I never go to that level, and people call me a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. I'm usually debunking a lot of that stuff. So, hey, the planet is strong. We're pretty strong, and this probably won't kill us all, but it certainly doesn't help. Greg Palast really did a great job covering what happened at Fukushima in his book, and I believe what he said was true, that was set up to fail. That those generators, as I think you just mentioned, there's no way they were going to handle anything major. That the whole thing was cost-effective, trim cost, and just like the oil spills and everything else, James, they figure it's cheaper to go ahead and send Kenneth Feinberg in, the Payzar from 9/11, and for every other thing, BP, the rest. They're just going to pay off some people, and they'll deal with those damages, and they'll get away with deferred payments, and the public will all think that they were called to the carpet. But it's cheaper to do that than to actually do stuff right. I mean, that seems to be a big part of this. And by the way, I just heard Greg Palast is going to join us on September 18th of this month. That's Jimi Hendrix's death day, just coincidentally enough. Greg Palast, an amazing BBC reporter. He's got a new book coming out as well. I don't know if you read his book, but it tells a lot about the energy industry that I've never heard from anyone, and he's got documents to back it up.
I have it, but I haven't read it yet. But I think he's right. I have heard his take on Fukushima and the fact that basically what this was it was the earthquake itself that did the damage more so than the tsunami, which they don't want you to know about because that means that the entire process that they used for approving the design of the reactors and the earthquake specifications is all a bunch of hooey.
Everywhere. Not just there, everywhere.
That's it. Especially, I mean, I don't think this should come as a surprise to people in Japan because the construction industry here is so infamously tied in with the Japanese mafia, and it's all corruption and kickbacks and basically schemes to look the other way while the construction work is going on. And there was a big scandal here a few years ago about a big hotel chain. Every single one of their hotels was in question because they had employed contractors to do construction work, and they were fudging the numbers for the earthquake proofing that they do here. So it shouldn't be that surprising. But again, I mean, this is the most sensitive type of engineering and construction work you can possibly do. So the fact that they were fudging the earthquake proofing numbers on that is pretty worrying, but again, as you say, it shouldn't be. It's par for the course. It shouldn't be a surprise for
the
it.
generator will keep the reactor cool in an emergency, because you need power for that, folks. That's what they don't tell you about these wonderful energy-saving reactors. It takes a lot of power to make them and to maintain them and to keep them safe. And that's very expensive, and it kind of betrays this whole idea that this is clean energy, by the way. We forgot what we talked about in the 70s, didn't we, James, about what do you do with the waste? I guess they put it in the water like fluoride, just distribute it somehow to the people, find a way to profit off of it. But really what it says is that none of these reactors are safe, wherever they're at in France, maybe this is why Iran shouldn't build a reactor. I don't know. Maybe you can build them right. I still haven't seen it done yet. We've come very close to massive global meltdowns several times, and none of these reactors are safe, and we need to understand that. If you live near one, oops.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've been researching recently into my podcast in thorium fuel reactors and other alternatives, and I think there's a lot to be said on that, and I think Japan is peculiarly, absolutely situated to be exploring some of those alternatives. So I hope that the protest movements that have picked up steam and hopefully aren't going to lose that steam will actually have some sort of effect on the political calculus here. And there were some signs that that's happening. But just on that note of that you were talking about just a few seconds ago when we were discussing the effects of this, it's not only the direct radiation effects that for example, are now being tested. There's new thyroid tests that they're going to start doing for children even outside of the Fukushima area, it's good to know that those tests are at least going to happen, and we'll see if they try to pull any funny business with the numbers, but it'll be interesting to see the results. But also the radioactive waste issue, still an ongoing issue here. They're looking for somewhere that they can even just temporarily store the radioactive waste, because they're ultimately looking for somewhere they can dump it for thousands of years. But even before they get to that point, they're going to need to find somewhere where they can just dump it for the next few years with the knowledge that they'll be able to find a long-term dumping site for some of this waste. And there's a big hassle going on right now with the Japanese government trying to negotiate with various municipalities. So this is making news here in Japan, not so much obviously in the international media, but it's a pretty big issue for what's going on here. And as you say, there was that recent study showing the butterfly mutations. There was a really good write-up on that at dw.de that I posted to fukushimaupdate.com that goes into some of why this is important, and the fact that these particular butterflies that they were testing are considered to be good harbingers of the environment in general. If these butterflies are deformed, that's because they are particularly sensitive to changes in the environment, so they are a particularly good sign of what's to come for other species. And they've started finding declines in various other species as well in the Fukushima area.
In other words, the
Bizarrely enough,
mutations are good because they're finding a way to cope with the environment. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
well, that could be one spin on it. Bizarrely enough, spiders in the area are actually increasing in numbers, but again, that's not particularly here nor there. But the point is that that it's very much a question of how this is going to affect the people in the area. And there was a worrying study that came out not so long ago that showed that now 36% of children that were tested in Fukushima had anomalous bumps on their thyroid. So there is the indications that this could be from the disaster. But again, I saw some of the alternative media running with that, saying that everyone's going to die. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. And certainly, thyroid cancer takes years to develop, even if it was as a result of the iodine exposure from right after the disaster. It would still be years before the cancer would be showing up. So this might be something else entirely. And I think that's why it's a good thing they're going to start testing kids outside of the Fukushima region to try to establish some sort of baseline, etc. And again, it's very easy to run away with some of these headlines and to just make a big deal out of something without putting it into its context. So I think it's kind of my job at FukushimaUpdate.com to try to keep people up to date with this and to hopefully put a damper on some of the hysteria about it, but also to question what the JGov and TEPCO are saying, because they're lying through their teeth constantly.
Absolutely. No, I mean,
it's a balancing act.
Yeah, I mean, minimally, if there's no conspiracy or not, they're trying to protect themselves. That's just how corporations work, folks. That makes common sense. Fukushima.com and the CorbettReport.com. James Corbett.
FukushimaUpdate.com.
FukushimaUpdate.com. Thank you for updating me on the on the correct URL. JamesCorbett.com. I'm going to go on his show once a month as well, and he'll be here. I guess, what are we in? The last Monday of the month, we got you, which is awesome. And then I'm doing one of the Sundays a month with you. Hey, I want to quickly give a shout-out to Gringo David for sponsoring and for being an executive producer of this segment from New Hampshire. Thank you. If you guys want to be an executive producer and sponsor segments of the show, you great supporters of the show, simply go to deadlinelive.info, kick in some money into the Jack Blood Show. It comes to us. We announce you on the air without giving your address, any of your information. That's why we're calling him Gringo David. He knows who he is. And also, please support James Corbett's work. That also is a value for value deal where you get value and all the great research and the guests and everything that he reports, and then you kick in voluntarily whatever funds you can to keep him going so that we can keep hearing all his great reports. That's how it works, man.
That's how it works. If people like the work, spread it, and if they want more, then help contribute to make it possible.
We've got about 3 minutes here. Quickly, whatever happened to Yuki Fujita, my old friend, the senator in Japan with the new party, which has been having nothing but problems? I haven't heard much from him, and I especially didn't really hear what he said about Fukushima. Quickly, if you can tell us if you've heard from him and what he's doing.
That is an excellent question, and to tell you the truth, I have absolutely no idea where he's at or what he's doing at the moment. For people who don't know, this is the guy that spoke out about 9/11 and brought it to the floor of the Diet here in Japan, and was pressing about 9/11 truth and doing it in a pretty big way, making international headlines. And he garnered a lot of headlines for that, but as you say, I haven't heard what he's been saying about Fukushima, etc. I'm not even sure what particular cabinet post or what have you he might have at this moment. I was in touch with someone who was in touch with him, and I was trying to get him set up for an interview, but never managed to hear back from him. So I haven't been able to follow him, don't know what he's doing these days, don't even know if he's still involved with 9/11 Truth or anything of that sort.
Well, we did an interview. People can look up Jack Blood and Yuki Fujita, Japanese senator. It's not a senator, actually, in their parliament. It's called counselor, I think, but it's the equivalent of a senator here. Very brave guy, and probably was told in no uncertain terms to keep your mouth shut, dude. Which I think is why we haven't heard much about him. Okay, I got to go out on this. Just almost no time, James Corbett. This has been reported by The Guardian and all media. Friday, we reported a live shooting, another public shooting. Basically, this was a disgruntled employee that went in and shot his boss at the Empire State Building. The cops all came in, and here is the picture I'm looking at. Gunman over here, cops looking the other way, shooting throughout the crowd. Killed all of, well, I don't know if anyone's died yet. They were injured, apparently, and many of them quite well so. Stray bullets, they're calling it. They're calling it incompetence. But it reminds me of what we heard at a lot of these other shootings, that the cops actually were involved in some of the shootings, and either that was incompetence, they were trigger happy, or they meant to pile up victims in New York where they're always after your guns. Guns, I have all this stuff on my website, folks, that counts the rounds from Mr. Johnson, this so-called shooter. It shows all the bystanders, 8 bystanders wounded. We've actually got surveillance video of all of this. The cops come in and mowed everyone down. Did you catch this story, James?
I did, and it definitely looks like a cop-committed atrocity here, and I hope that it'll make people who support gun control question just for 1 second why they are so sanguine about these cops going around with these guns and no one else.
Yeah, killer job today, James. I look forward to coming up on your show, the Corbett Report. Tell people when that's on and how to listen to it.
Corbett Report, well, it's updated every day. Just subscribe to the feed, you'll get it, and I hope we'll have you up. I'm hoping for second week of September, but we'll sort that out.
Oh, good. Right after the 11th anniversary of 9/11. Nothing will happen then. That will just be nothing, right, folks? I know, we're going to have a lot to report. I'll look forward to that. Thanks, James. Have a good one.
All right. Take care.
Stay bold, brother. And there he goes, and there we go. Tomorrow, huge show. Penny Langford Freeman, Ron Paul Insider, will join us. We'll have more election coverage, which really gets started tomorrow. Jason Rink joins us. I think Tom Woods joins us this week. We've got a bunch of other people. And Anthony Hilder will be with us on the 31st on Friday. That ought to be good as we spin out of election coverage. Thanks for staying with us. Stay tuned. The Scott Horton Show coming up right now, right here on No Agenda Global Radio. I'm out. Bye.